Good Tuesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for May the 30th. Today, we're reading together in Deuteronomy chapter 24. Thanks so much for taking time to read along with me today. Hope that you enjoyed a good Memorial Day. I hope the scheduling change didn't throw too much of a wrench in anybody's plans. Just figured we had a scheduled catch-up day on Wednesday, but I figured everybody be probably busy today or yesterday on Monday, so figured we just move that around a little bit and go ahead and have yesterday as a catch-up day and go ahead and read for the rest of the week. Coming up here today, we're reading in chapter 24. And then tomorrow, we're going to have a double reading in 25 and 26. Both of those are pretty short chapters, only I think 19 to 38 total verses. So not too much at all. We have to double up every so often to try to keep pace for the year. So tomorrow will be a double up reading 25 and 26. But for today, we want to look at chapter 24, which is going to have more instructions for us. We are in the middle of this section, which is giving us various laws and statutes, ordinances, and commands from God. Remember, they're about to enter into the promised land, and they are being reminded by Moses basically the expectations for them, how they are to approach certain situations that they might come up against, because they want to reflect well that they are the covenant people of Yahweh. They need to behave in a way that shows him reverence and that shows appreciation for him allowing them to be his covenant people and to show grace to others as he has shown grace to them. That's really going to be a key point that we'll talk about here toward the end of the chapter. But let me get Deuteronomy 24 up on the screen for us, and we'll read along together today. Deuteronomy 24, verse number 1. Deuteronomy 24 and verse number 1. If a man marries a woman, but she becomes displeasing to him because he finds something indecent about her, he may write her a divorce certificate, hand it to her, and send her away from his house. If after leaving his house, she goes and becomes another man's wife, and the second man hates her, writes her a divorce certificate, hands it to her, and sends her away from his house, or if he dies, the first husband who sent her away may not marry her again after she has been defiled, because that would be detestable to Yahweh. You must not bring guilt on the land Yahweh your God is giving you as an inheritance. When a man takes a bride, he must not go out with the army or be liable for any duty. He is free to stay at home for 1 year so that he can bring joy to the wife he has married. Do not take a pair of grindstones or even the upper millstone as security for a debt, because that is like taking a life as security. If a man is discovered kidnapping one of his Israelite brothers, whether he treats him as a slave or sells him, the kidnapper must die. You must purge the evil from you. Be careful with a person who has a case of serious skin disease, following carefully everything the Levitical priest instructs you to do. Be careful to do as I have commanded them. Remember what Yahweh your God did to Miriam on the journey after you left Egypt. When you make a loan of any kind to your neighbor, do not enter his house to collect what he has offered as security. Stand outside while the man you are making the loan to brings the security out to you. If he is a poor man, do not sleep with the garment he has given as security. Be sure to return it to him at sunset, and then he will sleep in it and bless you, and this will be counted as righteousness to you before Yahweh your God. Do not oppress a hard worker who is poor and needy, whether one of your Israelite brothers or one of the resident aliens in a town in your land. You are to pay him his wages each day before the sun sets, because he is poor and depends on them. Otherwise, he will cry out to Yahweh against you, and you will be held guilty. Fathers are not to be put to death for their children, and children are not to be put to death for their fathers. Each person will be put to death for his own sin. Do not deny justice to a resident alien or fatherless child, and do not take a widow's garment as security. Remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and Yahweh your God redeemed you from there. Therefore, I am commanding you to do this. Verse 19, when you reap the harvest in your field, and you forget a sheaf in the field, do not go back to get it. It is to be left for the resident alien, the fatherless, and the widow, so that Yahweh your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you knock down the fruit from your olive tree, do not go over the branches again. What remains will be for the resident alien, the fatherless, and the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, do not glean what is left. What remains will be for the resident alien, the fatherless, and the widow. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, I am commanding you to do this. And that is Deuteronomy chapter 24. All right, this particular text starts out with some marriage and divorce laws, and I'll just go ahead and tell you that there's a lot of questions that I have about what's being said here. I think there's some ambiguity here on purpose to cause us to focus on what must be focused upon. And I think what is being focused upon here is the way that we treat that the way that a spouse was to treat his spouse, specifically how a husband was to treat his wife. It speaks about her becoming displeasing to him because he finds something indecent about her. Again, very ambiguous, and that seems to be the point. It's not about the reasons, but it's about how he reacts to it. The way he is to react to it is not just send her away and put her out on her own, having no recourse whatsoever, not having any way by which she can take care of herself, but he is to write for her a divorce certificate and hand it to her. This would allow her to have proof, basically, of her history to take back to her parents. And some believe that in doing this, the dowry that would have been paid would actually be sent back to the family, or also for a second husband to know the circumstances so that something doesn't happen like in the previous section where he thinks that she's not a virgin and she ends up being killed for that. This just prevents all of that. So in doing so, she's able to leave the house. She is in a sense cared for, and although that sounds very strange considering what we're talking about, but she is given an ample opportunity to have a future. She's not going to be seen purely as mysterious used goods, but she has legitimacy now as into who she is and her marital status. So if she goes and she becomes another man's wife, again, this doesn't speak to whether or not this is good or not. It just speaking as a matter of fact, she goes to become somebody else's wife, and the same thing happens with the second man. Or if the second man dies, then the issue here that's being talked about specifically is the first husband is not allowed to marry her again after she has been defiled. And that seems to be after, again, best I can tell, that seems to be after the first husband has defiled her by putting her away. He's not to take her back again. Again, that seems strange. There's a lot of speculation in this. There's a lot of words. There's been a lot of ink spilled trying to explain this. I'll just be honest. I don't know. I don't know if there's some kind of cultural thing going on here that the law is working upon. But just the reality is, if he were to marry her again, this would be detestable to Yahweh. And in fact, it would bring guilt upon Yahweh's land. Again, I don't know much more about it than that. If you have any insight that maybe I don't have, something you've read or studied, then please feel free to leave that in the comment section. You can shed some light that I simply do not have to shed on that, and just don't have the time in this setting to flesh it out even more. But that's what we have concerning the marriage and divorce laws. The last thing I'll just say is go to Matthew 19. Jesus really simplifies this even more. Whenever you marry somebody, that's a commitment for life. You're not to break that. Simple as that. That's Jesus's instructions in Matthew chapter 19. Whenever the Pharisee, I believe it is, comes and asks about this, I believe specifically referencing what we see here in this text. Verse number 5 talks about the first 4 verses might make us think that God doesn't value marriage that much, but I think here verse number 5, it certainly shows that he does. He values marriage tremendously. In fact, it is the bedrock of society. And here it just shows how much he values marriage, and that if he has taken a bride, he's able to stay with her for a year before he goes off to war. If you have any military people in your family who got married in the military, Caden and Alex come to mind. Caden came in from boot camp. They got married during their 10-day leave in between boot camp and being shipped off to a couple of other places. I believe he went to Texas for some time and then went to North Carolina for some time before Alex was able to move with him up to Maryland. Sure, he would have rather preferred that they get married and he have a year at home before moving off. But nonetheless, that's the law here. And again, I think it just shows that God does certainly value marriage. He also values life, which is what is discussed, I think, in the rest of the chapter, valuing life and valuing the care of other people, that they were to care for other people. Number 1 in verse number 6, that if somebody has a debt and you take security for that, you take collateral, you don't take what they need in order to eat. You don't take their grindstones. That's how they make their grain. That's how they eat their bread. You don't take that. That's basically taking their livelihood. Verse number 7, if someone is a kidnapper, then if he kidnaps them and especially turns them into slaves or treats them as merchandise, that person is to die. We can see this in chapter 23 and verses 15 and 16 as well. Some issues concerning this about a slave. If a slave escapes from the master, that's fine. You leave them be. Amos chapter 1 and verses 6 and 9 also talk a little bit about this. God doesn't like kidnappers. He doesn't like those who treat other people simply like merchandise. That's not good. Especially whenever it comes to the Israelite brothers. That is your brother. You don't treat them like merchandise. Verses 8 and 9 talk about skin disease, again, caring for other people. Maybe what's being talked about here specifically is some sort of contagious skin disease or something that just makes other people unclean when they come in contact with someone with this skin disease. It harkens back to Miriam, how Miriam, whenever her and Aaron revolted against Moses' leadership, how Yahweh turned her or gave her a very serious skin disease, and she had to stay outside the camp for seven days before they can move on again. Just remember that. So remember the seriousness of that. And Moses says here, carefully follow everything the Levitical priests have told you. All that is concerning their cleanness laws and what makes someone unclean and the way in which they can go about being made clean again. Verses 10 through 13 talk about, again, collateral. Whenever somebody, whenever you make a loan to someone, and whenever you enter the house, basically he offers you the security or the collateral, just show them respect. Treat others with dignity. Treat others with respect. Don't come barging into their house to try to take what you want to from them. If they give you a garment, especially if it's a poor man, you don't just keep that and make them shiver at night. No, you give that back to them. Just treat them with respect and dignity. And in doing so, whenever you treat others with respect and dignity, whenever you act righteously towards others, the text says that God sees that as righteousness as well. He counts that as righteousness. This will be counted as righteousness to you. That hopefully brings to our mind what we read concerning Abraham and his faith, that it was counted as righteousness to him. So here, in treating your fellow man well, it is counted as righteousness to you. Do not oppress a hired worker who is poor and needy, whether that's Israelite or a resident alien. You pay them every day. Whenever they work for you, you pay them so they're able to go and purchase what they need in order to live for that particular day. And if you don't, they're going to cry out to you against the Lord, and you will be guilty for that. Verse 16 talks about how you are responsible basically for your own sin. You are responsible. You are accountable, not someone else within your family. Just talk about, that's what true justice is. True justice is the offending party is the one who suffers. And speaking of justice, do not deny justice to the resident alien, the fatherless child, the widow, or do not deny justice to them, the fatherless child. Do not take a widow's garment as security. And here's what it's all rooted in. It is all rooted in, remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and Yahweh your God redeemed you from there. Therefore, I'm commanding you to do this. Therefore, I'm commanding you to remember where you came from, and to remember that you were at the mercy of others. And you know what it feels like to be mistreated. You know what it feels like to be denied justice. Therefore, you don't do that toward other people. Therefore, in caring for other people, when you reap the harvest, don't go back over it again. Let others have what's left over. When you knock down the fruit from your olive tree, don't go back over it again. Let the needy pick over them. Whenever you gather your grapes from your vineyard, don't go a second time. Let the needy take what is left over. And this hopefully brings to our mind Ruth. That's how Ruth and Naomi survived for some time in their story, that Boaz's servants went and did their picking, and Ruth went up behind them. He said, let them be. Let them take what is necessary. So again, all this gets back to, again, how do you treat other people? Do you treat them with respect and dignity, or are you hateful towards them? Do you treat them as something lesser than human? Do you treat them less than yourself? No. Moses says, remember where you came from. Remember that you were once the helpless person. You were the person that was at the mercy of others. Therefore, you must treat other people mercifully and graciously. And certainly, I think that's a lesson for us to take away from this chapter, is that we need to treat other people well, because we remember that in our own past, great grace has been extended to us by God. And if great grace has been extended to us by God, then we need to do our best to show grace to others in the same way. If you have any questions or comments about this text here in Deuteronomy chapter 24, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below, and we'll make sure to have a good conversation about those things as best we can. Hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday, everyone. Again, hope you'll tune in tomorrow as we have a double reading in Deuteronomy chapter 25 and 26. Looking forward to reading that together with you then. Take care. God bless.